vernal equinox, which is the observation of the place in the sky when the sun is rising in spring, that moves, takes about 26,000 years, and moves through the whole zodiac. It's like a giant clock. And we're now, they say, entering the age of Aquarius, the vernal equinox entering Aquarius. So we're over here today. But if you go, we're here. Aquarius, the actual Aquarius waterfall would be about 1,000 years from now. But going back, we have the Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo. Now here, there's a myth connected with Virgo and Leo that says that humanity became depraved and went from the Golden Age to the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, finally to the Iron Age. And as humanity spiritually declined, the gods couldn't take being with them, they left one by one. Finally, Austria, which is named for Virgo, was the last to leave.
10 minutes.
And when Austria left, Zeus brought a flood to punish humanity. So if you interpret this, Virgo or Austria leaving would imply the vernal equinox now left Virgo. And this is where you got the catastrophe. And if you look at the boundary between Leo and Virgo, it occurred 12,700 years ago. So here is actual constellations, and you can calculate this with programs to plot back the position of the vernal equinox. And this important date is recorded in the Beth Alpha Synagogue mosaic. This mosaic, they date from the 6th century Christ era. And you notice here, they had the symbol for this 100 years ago. And here you have a lot of flooding. This is a rate of meltwater discharge into the Gulf of Mexico from an ocean sediment core. So you see that this catastrophe had indication of a solar involvement, melting of the ice sheets. This period was had very high solar flare activity based on the rise of carbon-14 at that time. You also had a carbon-14 spike here. You had a geomagnetic flip, or a flip, but not a reversal here. So there was a lot going on at that time. And this shows, again, from the Cariaco Basin, the carbon-14 record. This is a magnification of what was going on. And you see these spurts, periodically, of radiocarbon. And they're separated by the solar cycle. So there's something like 3 22-year solar cycles between these two. And again, another set of 3, about 66 years. And between these two, it's 198 years. So it's like 9 22-year solar cycles. And that is a very prominent cycle that they find when they look geologically at solar effects. That 198-year cycle is very prominent. And actually, the 2 largest carbon-14 surges occurred at those 2 dates. This one day is 12,887 years before 2000, so in other words, 12,900 years ago. And the other was closer to 12,700, which is the date recorded in the zodiac. And this shows that you got a huge, really intense spike at that time. This is from the tree ring record. We see it also in the tree ring record, this huge rise of carbon-14. So, also in the Netherlands, they find this blackened horizon. They call it the Ucella horizon, which indicates some sort of conflagration occurring. We can date at least one of the zodiac constellations back to the Ice Age, the constellation of Taurus. They have a date going back 17,000 years. That comes from Lascaux, from a cave scroll, France. They found this painting on the wall of Taurus. And the way they know this is not just a drawing of a bull is that they painted the Pleiades here and the Hades star cluster here. And there's another set of stars here. So they know that these people were depicting the sky, the constellation in the sky. And this is mainstream science. You may be aware of this. And they did radiocarbon dating, and it came out to be about 16,500 years old. I'm not sure if that's the radiocarbon date or the calendar date, but definitely far back. So, at least one constellation we know goes way back, and it's a very important constellation. The bull symbolizes this charge of cosmic rays coming from the galactic center, which I call superwave. If you look at Taurus, he's charging along the ecliptic, and his horn, his horn is going right towards the galactic anticenter. I'll show you this in this next slide. If this is the galactic plane, here's the solar system here. This is the ecliptic. The ecliptic is at 60 degrees to the galactic equator plane. And so here we have Scorpius aligned towards the direction of our galactic nucleus. And here's Taurus, opposite. It's towards the anti-center, they call it, the direction away from the center. And Leo and Aquarius, one more point. Leo and Aquarius are at right angles. And in the zodiac, these are the fixed signs. They form the Sphinx. So the Sphinx is really encoding, it's calling our attention, thank you, to this important fact that the zodiac is talking about things happening in the galactic center. Now, going back, where did that come from? Oh, I punched the button down here. But do I have to go through all the slides again? Oh, okay, good. There's one more. Okay. So, here's Orion. And it's as if Orion and Taurus are doing battle. Now notice Orion is pointing with his club towards the galactic anticenter. These are the way the constellations would appear about 16,000 years ago. And the myth, the story, the legends about this constellation, the Orion constellation, say that he represents the loss of life of humanity that occurred in a great catastrophe in the past. So he's sort of like a memorial in the sky to commemorate all the dead souls that sorrowfully passed away in this tragedy. And it occurred through this combat with the bull. In Egyptian mythology, they talk about the bull of heaven, that the Creator sent out the bull of heaven, or Hathor, who was a goddess of inundation, flood, sent out the bull of heaven to punish humanity. Unfortunately, there's this overtone that humanity was bad and needed to be punished, but really we have to get above all that and realize this is part of nature. You know, the galactic center is the creative center. It periodically explodes, emits matter. All the matter of the stars, matter forms our planet, the sun, the stars, it all came from the center of the galaxy. So if it weren't for this process, we wouldn't be here. part of nature, not to feel we did anything wrong. Interestingly, there's one myth says Orion died because he stepped on a scorpion. And there's another myth that says that Artemis, goddess who they had an affair together, and Apollo became jealous. And when Orion was being chased by the scorpion, in the great distance, he was very far away. Apollo says to Artemis, this fellow, he didn't say his name, he said it was somebody else that had raped a woman. He's a bad man, you should kill him. And Artemis was a hunter, and so she shot him with an arrow and he died. So we have two myths. In one case, he was killed by an arrow, and the other by a scorpion. And interestingly, if you look at the zodiac, here we have Scorpio, and here's Sagittarius, the archer. And if you look, these are the only two arrows, the stinger and the archer's arrow. Only two arrows in the zodiac. And if you put them the way they appear in the sky, you have to reverse the Scorpio sign this way and put it on the right. So this is the way it would appear if you're looking at the sky. And you see they're pointing at something. So what they're pointing at is the galactic center, Sagittarius A star. This is an X-ray picture. And that's where the mother star is located. Astronomers call it black hole. I don't believe in black holes. You can easily disprove black holes, but unfortunately astronomy today has become like a religion. They latch onto the concept, and even if there's evidence against it, they continue. Very simple proof, I don't have time to explain, which would convince you that this is indeed a star, not a black hole. It's about, I estimate, about 25 times larger in diameter than the sun, and it's putting out, well, it's 4 million times the mass of the sun, and it's putting out hundreds of millions of times more radiation than the sun. And at times it explodes, and the amount of energy goes up 100,000 million times. And that's what produces what I call a super wave. It's cosmic ray volley, a wave of cosmic rays that shoots through the galaxy at the speed of light. And the ancients left a message for us to indicate this past event. This is the constellation of Sagittarius, and here is Scorpius. And right now, well, there's a myth that says that Sagittarius was taking aim at the heart of the scorpion. So if you look today, here's the arrow. You'll see that the trajectory, this is the heart. Here's the heart. It's Antares, a big red giant star, very bright. And so you have to regress back because this star is moving over time. So you have to say, where was it in the past when it aligned, this trajectory of the arrow aligned with the heart, and you come up with a date 15,860 years ago. And also the other thing is this, here you have the constellation of Sagitta, the arrow, which it's not written, but you can conclude this is the arrow that Sagittarius shot. But now it flew out along the galactic equator from the galactic center. And this represents the cosmic ray volley that moved out. By the way, the tip of the arrow is exactly 1 radian from the center. So if you take a radius, you take the radius of the circle, and you mark off along the circumference. That's where 1 radian is. So when you are referring to this point, what did you do? Battery? It's a switch here. I probably mistaken to get the switch. Now, this tip, by being so close to 1 radian, it's in effect referring to the galactic center, and that this distance is a distance from the galactic center to Earth. So symbolically, it's telling us that these cosmic rays do reach us very quickly. And we should be concerned about this. And now astronomers have no idea of this threat. That this has not entered mainstream science. This is my book, Decoding the Message of the Pulsars, where I talk about messages that are being sent to us from across the galaxy. As far as I know, it's the first discovery of extraterrestrial communication being received. My interpretation is that pulsars are not natural objects, they are beacons, and there's something like over 2,000 pulsars they found scattered throughout the galaxy, and certain of these are referring to this event that happened at the end of the Ice Age. They're trying to call our attention to it. And for example, they put the second fastest pulsar right here at the 1 radian point. Now that can't be by chance. And this has so many unusual characteristics. It's as if it's a beacon that stands out from all of the pulsars, and they put it right there. And here, and that's the second fastest pulsar. The third fastest pulsar is only some degrees away, and it deviates, its pulsation rate deviates from the other by only 3%. That's incredibly, it can't be just coincidence, you know. You can calculate the coincidences of these things, like the sighting. I calculated the sighting of this pulsar at that particular point, and it's like 10 to the 23rd, something, or a huge number like that. And one chance in 10 to the 23rd, it could have been due to chance. The other thing is that there's ratios that show between this distance here and the longitude distance between this and this indicates pi to very significant figures. Then there's alignments here. This aligns with Gamma Sagitta, which is the point of the arrow. So it's almost like they knew the location of the arrow in our zodiac, or this is not part of the zodiac, but it's part of the message of the zodiac, and are trying to call our attention to it, which makes you wonder about visitation, and maybe they taught us their constellation lore. And this is a description of galactic superwave, cosmic rays moving out as a wave. And so if we are here, and here's the core. And so this wave would travel out as a spherical wave of cosmic rays. And as it goes out, I found evidence that it was detonating supernova explosions on the way. If you look at the closest supernova here, Vela supernova remnant, located right there, and the Crab supernova remnant is the second closest to us of the young supernova remnants. And if you look at the dates that they exploded, they occurred at the time this superwave came by. This superwave was dating around 14,000 years ago when it came through this area. But it was lasting for several thousands of years. So this whole period was a period of excess cosmic ray radiation. And right now, the Crab Nebula is right in the middle of this barrage of cosmic rays. And that's why it's the most luminous supernova remnant in the sky. And it's doing all sorts of unusual things that astronomers are mystified about. It's shooting out gamma rays, very high energy. it can't even be produced by the pulsar. You can show that the pulsar most likely is, that's the other thing, both of these are marked by pulsars, and they're among the most unusual pulsars in the sky, along with the millisecond pulsar that we just mentioned. So it's like they're trying to call our attention to this, and actually this is how I got the idea for the superwave, because in the beginning all I had done is deciphered the zodiac arrow date, and I knew that the zodiac symbology, I had also discovered that it's describing a new physics of creation, and ether physics, which is different from standard science. That the point where Sagittarius and Scorpius are is right at the point in the description of this physics of creation where matter and energy are just beginning to emerge. So, given the date it was recording and this idea of the emergence of matter and energy, and that's how I concluded there was a core explosion at the center on that date. But I hadn't at that point concluded that that stuff actually reaches us at the speed of light. It was this that showed me that, because the only way that they could have had this relation, because it's this, from this point to this point, it could only have detonated on this date at the wave that traveled at the speed of light. So all of those things together, archaeastronomy, extraterrestrial communication together caused me to form the theory. Of course, that's not something you mention in the science publication, so I put that in my book. Let me go to the next slide. This is a record of from the ice core record. These are brilliant 10 spikes. Brilliant 10 produced by cosmic rays. 10 minutes? Okay. Here's that 40,000 year event. Notice how big it is. Here's the one at the end of the Ice Age. So this one, about 41,000 years ago, was huge compared to that. And you see how it dips here? This is where you had the geomagnetic reversal and the very large solar activity. Solar activity tends to shield cosmic rays, so that's why cosmic ray exposure to the Earth went down at that time. The solar cosmic ray exposure went up. So this gives you an idea of what was happening. If you adjust for the screen, in fact, this would have been way up here probably, maybe 3 or 4 times as high as this one. But you see that we've had this going all the way back. This is the last ice age. This shows you climate temperature. So here was the ending of the warming of the ice age. Here was the onset. Here was the semi-glaciated state from about 110,000 years ago to about 70,000 semi-glaciated. Then you went to foreglaciation. And at all these climatic boundaries, you had these pulses of cosmic rays, super waves, basically. Here was a very large one that ended the previous glaciation, most likely due to solar activity. And if you look at this Heinrich event, diagram again, the zodiac arrow date, that 15,800 year ago date, coincides with Heinrich event 1. And also you had a big acidity spike in the Antarctic ice core at that time, it lasted for 100 years. So something definitely was going on that day. And this superwave would have brought cosmic dust into the solar system and done all sorts of unusual things to the climate. It would completely change the climate. It would have aggravated the sun. This dust would have surrounded the sun. And when dust falls on the surface of the sun, it energizes it. The sun would turn into what's called a T Tauri star. We see these out there. They're surrounded by dust, and they're very active. They're flaring. Their chromospheres are expanded. And I want to mention a date for the Sphinx. if you look at the zodiac, the brightest star on the ecliptic is Regulus, and it's one of the four guardian stars, the brightest, and it's like a marker. It's right at the breast of the Sphinx. And traditionally, the Egyptians believed that the sun rose through the breast of the Sphinx, that the breast of the Sphinx was a portal to the underworld, to Osiris' underworld, the realm of darkness. This is a solar sunspot number map, a chart going back, and you see on this date, 9000 BC, sunspot number was quite low, so solar activity would have been low at that time. So it's logical that the Sphinx could have been built at that time. Also, Roger Cunningham claims that there's a map inside the air shaft where Gatton Brink's door is a star map above the door. And he says that the constellations it shows are as they would appear 11,200 years ago. And he's suggesting that that might have been the date of the building of the Great Pyramid. So it matches with this date. So this could be a date for the pyramid. And also already mentioned about this, that the pyramid, the cosmic pyramid, could have been used as a cosmic ray shelter, and as well as the other pyramids around the world, the ones in Croatia, so on. You had, after it was a small cosmic ray event, a small super ray, about 5,300 years ago, around the time of the beginning of the Mayan calendar. And notice that after that you had the rise of Egyptian civilization, Nile Delta civilization. So it was as if things cooled down and civilization could start up at that point. But we've had some small superwave events since then. There have been about 13 of them. The last one occurred 700 years ago in the horse and buggy days. So if an event like that happened today, though, it could bring us back to horse and buggies. It could take down the electric grid, could take down the satellites, just like a coronal mass ejection. So these are things we're overdue for another event. So these are things that could happen in the near future. And here are dates that I predicted that these happened on based on astronomical observations of neon bubbles that are expanding from the galactic center. And they match up with what you see in the ice core record. At least 8 of the 13 I've had matches for, where they find rising of carbon-14 or beryllium-10. And this is the G2 cloud trajectory. It's about now, it's very close to the galactic core, and we're waiting to see if something will happen. I have news postings on my website, ethereum.com, about this. So the question is, if there's a binary star there that might get sucked in, or a planet, my guess is that the planets and binary stars would have enough momentum to carry them away, so it shouldn't be a problem. It's only the small stuff, like maybe comet-sized objects or smaller, that could fall in and could energize the core. I would have liked to talk about the advanced science encoded, like the Virgo constellation. I'll just do this. Virgo, she's pointing at, with her one hand at the center of the Virgo supercluster, which is the most concentrated bunch of galaxies in the sky, and it's also the closest supercluster, Virgo supercluster. This whole thing here is the Virgo supercluster, and this is the Virgo cluster, which she's pointing to. With her other hand, she's showing the direction of the Virgo supercluster equator. So how would they have knowledge of this? There's actually a myth about Virgo that she's seeding the stars of the sky, that she carries a shaft of wheat, and the wheat grains she scatters, and those become stars. So in a way, while she's talking about the creation of stars in the sky, she's also talking about the creation of galaxies. So this is one step higher of knowledge, because they would have had to know those were galaxies there and not stars. They would have had to have telescopes as big as Mount Palomar or some of the large telescopes we have. They would have had to know about the redshift, the spectral, had to do spectral measurements to know that those weren't stars. They would have had to see the spiral characters of the galaxies. So this indicates very high level of technology. And they also code in the zodiac the 3-degree Kelvin background anisotropy, where it's hotter in one part of the sky and colder in the other. This requires use of helium-cooled detectors, spacecraft, to get them up in the sky above the atmosphere, because you can't see this below the atmosphere. So it requires space travel, basically computers, immense computation. Whoever designed the zodiac was as far ahead as we are, at least. And it's very possible it came from off-planet, which teachings and civilization concerned with our survival. There's more, but do you want me to go on? 5 more minutes? Oh, okay. So the zodiac was designed as a cryptogram. The Sphinx was one of the keys to decipher the cryptogram, which is why they talk about the riddle of the Sphinx. The truth is, the riddle is, solve me, solve my cryptogram. And the cryptogram, if you solve it, you realize about the galactic core explosion phenomenon and the idea of the physics of creation. And one of the other keys is the tarot. So they say that astrology and the tarot are the gold and silver keys of occult knowledge. So really, we're talking about cryptogram. The tarot puts the physics principles, they're quoting principles of an ether physics, and they describe in quite detail how to construct this physics. And I was working not from the tarot, but from systems theory, and from chemistry, chemical wave phenomena. That's how I developed the physics, and it was after I developed the physics I realized that they had this in the past. They were trying to pass this down to us. So we're sort of rediscovering the physics that they had. They say that the initiates in ancient Egypt wanted to become indoctrinated into these mysteries, that they had to enter the breast of the Sphinx blindfolded. They had to pass through tests. You're probably aware of these stories. And then they were led to a chamber where they saw the frescoes on the wall, which from documents left attributed to Iamblichus, which were perhaps written in 500 AD. You're not sure of the origin, but it came through some manuscripts from France, actually. I think they surfaced there, and probably preserved by some Masonic lodges in the past. And with the tarot, we see these principles in the right order, and by matching up the zodiac signs to get the same concepts, because you can see the same concepts in the zodiac, but they're scattered, they're in different order. And so it's sort of like the gene in creating chromosomal reproduction. You have the code in the gene, you have to put the proteins in the right order to get reproduced a reproduction of the idea of the code. And when you do that, the zodiac gives you an indication you've correctly decoded. It's sort of like the safe, opening the safe. You have to go first one way around, then the other way around, sort of like the Stargate movie. Actually, the idea came from my manuscript. It was circulated in Hollywood at that time. But when you finally get the right order, you find the new order, the polarities line up in the same order, plus minus, and the qualities have a new pattern, which again is ordered. And there's very few combinations of who did that. So that's sort of like a feedback that you correctly decoded it. And you find that what they're passing down is an incredibly advanced physics described in these books. And this is a video of, this is the ether reaction model they're talking about, called Model G. Double click on this, right here. I'll go to the next one. The next one's more interesting. Because this is animated, this shows the way this is the actual open system. These are transmutations, sort of like Keely's idea that there's more than one ether, there's many different types of ether, and they're reacting, just like there's biochemical reactions in our body, the reactions, the fusions, very close to the Star Wars idea of the Force, that space takes account of itself, the weight-heading idea that space is bound together as an organic whole. I'll go next one. Oops. There we go. I pushed the right place. Yeah. So here's a video, you can get it going, showing us a computer simulation of those reactions. And they produce a wave pattern which represents a nucleon emerging out of the zero point. And this is what they were talking about. It's the emergence of the primordial wave that gave the particle of matter. And if you can explain the creation of one particle of matter, that explains everything, because you've solved the mystery of creation. You just do it over and over. You don't need a Big Bang for this. Space is not expanding, stationary. Matter comes into being spontaneously through continuous creation. And that creation is going on most rapidly in the centers of galaxies. So we're just about done here. And it's encoded in all the major ancient creation myths, like the myth of Atum, story of Osiris, story of Zeus, Babylonian creation epic. They're all symbolic representations of this creation science. It's, for them to understand this, they would have had to have computers to do the simulation, which I unfortunately wasn't able to show you. But indeed, it blows your mind when you really get into these things with the knowledge of these new developments in science. Thank you very much.